listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Happy NFL Week 1. We finally made it. It is football season. Welcome into the GM Shuffle as we kick off a new season with you. I'm Grace Remington, your new host, and Michael Lombardi, the one, the only, the best NFL insider in the biz. He is back for another season. Michael, I've heard a lot about you. I know you're a legend in these parts. Right. Hey, no. You set your own betting lines. That's a legend in my book, but I'm excited to get to work with you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We're excited to have you on the podcast. You follow some Tate Frazier, which started out with the GM Street. Then we went to Adnan Virk, who was with us over at Cadence on the GM Shuffle. And then, of course, we have Femi, 4-game Femi. Femi could watch 4 games at one time, which was remarkable. We'll miss him, but we're excited to have you back. We need a voice of reason. We need a female on this audience to kind of, put us in perspective. You can act as Millie's voice, my wife, and tell me I'm full of shit all the time, which she does, which is great. So it'll be fun to have it. I'm excited to work with you. I'm excited to work with you on our new morning show as well. So, yeah, the season's starting. We got Labor Day weekend. Everybody leaves Ocean City today. I'm happier than hell. And we get to talk football, Grace. And I know you're from the Washington, D.C. area, so tell us, did you grow up a Redskin fan or what happened?
Yeah, I actually kind of grew up a Chargers fan, huge Phillip Rivers fan, huge LaDainian Tomlinson fan, because that's the area my dad was from. And being in the D.C. area as a kid, those teams weren't exactly winning at that point, so it was kind of hard to root for them. But of course, once I got to, the high school years, your whole friend group starts rooting for the home team. So yeah, I liked the Washington football team back then. They were actually my first professional experience as a member of the media. I had my first internship at NBC Washington, which is a legacy station. A lot of really great media personalities and people who break news have come out of there. So I was at then Redskins training camp. I think it was 2015. RG3 and Kirk Cousins were there. That was an interesting time. So that was my introduction to the NFL. But honestly, that's when I learned I really loved covering football, because we were down at training camp in Richmond in that humidity and 90-degree heat. And I was just so jazzed to show up every day. There's just something about training camp that gets you excited for the season. And I didn't care how hot it was. It was fun. It was fun being out there on the practice field. But I did college football after that in the Gainesville, Florida and Birmingham TV market. So that was a lot of SEC football. Then I moved to Tampa Bay. And that was the Tampa Bay era with all 3 major sports teams reaching their respective championships. Of course, Tom Brady led the Bucs to Super Bowl 50. The Lightning won back-to-back Stanley Cups, and the Rays made it to the World Series, didn't win, but got to cover 3 boat parades. That's something I think you need to experience in Ocean City. But of course, Tom Brady and that avocado tequila moment was one of the most fun times of my life. So, love where I've been. I spent some time in Charlotte too. It was the last year of Matt Rule and Sam Darnold, but got to see CMC live. So that was pretty cool. But honestly, the 2 GMs at Carolina and Tampa during that time when I was there, Jason Light and Scott, I'm forgetting his last name. I'm sorry.
Scott Federer.
Yes, of course. Learned a lot from watching the way they operate and make deals. So lots of great experience. And now I'm excited to hear your perspective on the entire league as well.
Well, we don't sugarcoat it here on the GM Shuffle. We tend to shoot it straight, so don't hold back. We don't have to play. We're not playing any political games here, so we'll just say it like it is, and we're either right or we're wrong, and we just know that honesty is what's the most important thing. And this year, as we start, that's going to be the highlight of the year: is just speak the truth.
Yep, love to hear it. That's how it should be. Well, with that, let's get into our NFL news and notes presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. The biggest news of the weekend is another deal going down in this busy wide receiver market. San Francisco finally gets it done with Brandon Aiyuk agreeing to a 4-year, $120 million extension. that puts him in the 30 million club in terms of an average annual value. What was your reaction when you first heard the Aiyuk news?
Well, he finally took the deal. I mean, this deal's been on the table for a long time. He was due to make 14 million this year. Okay, he was due to make 14 million this year. He ends up making 24.1 million this year. Now he got extra years added to the deal, but I'm sure John Lynch was just ready to pull his hair out because the bigger part of this contract negotiation was getting Aiyuk to admit where he belonged in the salary structure. He kept thinking he was going to be a top 5 receiver. He wanted to break the 30 million mark. He wanted to get all these, and he kept holding out, and they kept acquiescing, letting him stay in there and doing what he had to do. But I think now, as he comes in, he's right at 30 million, which I think is a little bit of a fabrication in the sense that it's back end loaded of the contract. It makes him happy. They get the outside receiver. Now everybody will start asking, well, how can they afford it? They got Debo making so much money. They've got Aiyuk making this money. They got your guy, Christian McCaffrey, making this money. This will be a team that will have to shed salary going into next year.
Yeah, now looking at the NFL's top paid wide receivers by average per year, Justin Jefferson making 35 mil, CD Lamb at 34, AJ Brown at 32, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 30, and Tyreek Hill at 30. Then you have Brandon Aiyuk. One of these things does not belong. So how did he weasel his way into this group?
Well, I think, when it looks like, so what happens with all these contracts, and as Adam Schefter reported and the agent comes in, no one counts the 14 million that he was due to earn on the rookie contract, right? They kind of dismiss that. So he ends up earning 24 million. So basically this year, he only earned $10 more million than he would have earned at another time. And then at that point, you add that 10 million, he was already due to earn 14, and then you add it into the contract. Now the average per year comes down significantly. But for the player, this looks like I've made 30. For the club, the actual output of cash is just a $10 million increase. Now he has option bonuses that are not guaranteed for skill and injury immediately. So this can be a pay-as-you-go contract. And he wins because now he could say, I'm in the $30 million club, but he's going to have to play to that $30 million level. And we'll see if he can do that. Look, if Trent Williams doesn't come back, and that's the big thing, right? Trent Williams has to come back, and they need protection for Brock Purdy. But one thing Aiyuk does that I think is so important for the 49er offense, he can win on the outside versus man coverage. So when the teams, because the 49er passing game is so inside the number structured, whether it's Kittle, who gets paid well, whether it's McCaffrey running option routes, whether it's Debo running a slant, all those routes are in-breaking routes that clog the middle of the field, whereas Aiyuk can win on the outside. And Purdy can throw the ball out there, even though nobody wants to give Purdy credit for having a great arm. He can throw the ball outside the numbers. So I think that's why he was important. Now, next year, maybe if Debo doesn't play well, that number is going to come off the books. I think he's the one who's most vulnerable. Unfortunately, with Ricky Pearsall, I don't know where he'll be after having just gone shopping in Union Plaza in San Francisco, and he gets shot. So thankfully, he's fine. He's in stable condition, but I don't know what it means for this year.
Yeah, a lot of competition for touches between CMC and all the talent on that offense. There are now 8 players on this Niners team earning an average annual salary of 15 or more. And you mentioned the biggest story of them all, Trent Williams. He wants to get paid. He wants to be the highest paid offensive lineman in terms of average annual value. Right now, it's Tristan Wirfs and Penei Sewell at the top. And we know this guy does not joke around about holding out, because when he had that medical issue with the Commanders, he sat out the entire season. So how long do you think he'll take his holdout?
Well, I think he has a pretty good relationship with Kyle Shanahan, right? So look, the number that he's looking for is above 28 million per year. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to where they can massage his contract to where he does get that, because he deserves it. I mean, he is as good as any player on the team. He is one of the best left tackles. Right now, he's at 23 million. So he's at 36 years old. He's at 23 per year. This year he's due to make 20 million just flat. with the prorated signing bonus. He's got 750 of roster bonuses in there. He's missed his workout bonus. Now he's going to have to pay back the fine. So they're going to have to put $10 million into this Kittle to get him up to where he would be a normal rate to spread it out. And that doesn't include the 25 or 26 season, which they still own his rights. 26, he balloons up to $32 million, which made this contract seem higher than it was. He goes from $22 million in 25 to 32 and 26. That's where the average per year has gone way up. So he needs a cash infusion. They're going to have to give it to him. And I think the relationship between Kyle and Trent, I think can get this deal done because they need him. Look, let's face it, Grace. If they don't have him in there, all of a sudden they're not as good as a football team. They have to chip on the left side. Their run game to the left side isn't as good. Their outside zone to the left isn't as good. I think it's problematic. He's an important figure. I know he's 36, and you hate to pay older players, but the reality of it is he's one of those guys you have to pay.
Yeah, he impacts every part of the offense. You brought up his age, and I was going to do the same thing. He's 36 years old, so there won't be many big paydays after this deal. And I respect any player trying to get the bag while they can. It's a violent sport. You gotta earn as much as you can, and give generational wealth to your family. But you being on the executive side, how frustrating is it when you can kind of see the future, and what this player will provide for you, yet you need him right now?
Yeah, that's the hard part. We got to win today, but we also got to take care of tomorrow. But I'm not sure that Trent Williams can't play 2 more years just based on the way he's played. I think to me, his number says, he's 30, his number says, but his birthday says he's 36, but his athleticism on the field looks to me more like he's 33. So you have to take that into consideration. You're nervous all the time, but hey, it's the cost of doing business, Grace.
All right, well, we'll see if it gets sorted out. His week 1 debut, potentially, coming up in just a week against the Jets. You're listening to the GM Shuffle. We have more NFL news on the other side.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle as we kick off week 1 of the NFL season. I'm your host, Grace Remington, with the great Michael Lombardi. We were talking about wide receiver deals and Brandon Aiyuk finally getting his to start the new season. CeeDee Lamb also getting paid, but his quarterback, Dak Prescott, is not. Prescott is in the final year of a 4-year, $160 million contract that he signed back in 2021. He's been trying to get a new deal for quite some time now, but it doesn't look like it'll be done before that September 8th opener against the Browns. Interestingly enough, he is quoted as saying, "I think it says a lot if it isn't done." Michael, what do you make of the situation?
Well, I think it will say a lot. I think it will say that Jerry was unhappy with the performance against the Packers by a guy he's paying a lot of money to. And look, I don't think Jerry's intimidated at all by free agency. I think, the media is. The media is worried that he's not going to get a contract done. But I'm sure Jerry's sitting back in his office saying, where's he going to go? Like, where's he going? Is he going to go to the Saints? They're $90 million over the cap. Is he going to go to the Raiders and play for the Raiders? Maybe, but I'll match that deal. Does he really want to leave being the star quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and go to the Raiders? That's a tough choice. Usually quarterbacks don't leave. Kirk Cousins left Washington because they made him leave. Kirk Cousins left Minnesota because they made him leave. It wasn't that, typically quarterbacks change because the other team. Tom Brady left because he wanted to get paid real money. And so I think to me, it's usually dictated by the salary. I don't think Jerry's scared of that. I think Jerry's prepared. But I think what Jerry's worried about is the performance in that playoff game, the fact that he hasn't been to a conference championship game since 1995, and that, Dak has to assume some of that responsibility. He's got to assume it. He's got to take it on. And if you're running a team, all of a sudden you don't want to be running to the window to pay a guy that, didn't play well in the biggest game of the year. and I think that's the biggest issue here. And Jerry admitted so. I saw Ed Werner put out a tweet the other day I wrote about this, Grace, on vsin.com, where I basically said that it was really, Jerry's bitterness towards that Packer game has carried into the offseason. Like, he's not real anxious to reward McCarthy for his performance of getting the team ready, nor is he ready to reward Dak for his 2 pick sixes or 1 pick six in that game, and were bad and played poorly throughout the game. So, I don't know, he's not worried about free agency, because you could write down on your hand how many teams are going to be looking for a quarterback. The Giants, the Raiders. Okay, there's 2. Well, the Giants, you're going to pay the New Jersey state taxes. I mean, Dallas can offer significantly less money, more money than the Giants can, because of the tax ratios. So I think you have to be – Jerry's just sitting there looking at it saying, wait a minute, I don't mind paying, but I want to make sure I'm paying when somebody's deservingly to get paid. I know Dak had a great year, but, man, that loss to the Packers stings really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3 straight seasons of 12-5 records, but regular season success doesn't mean anything if it doesn't show up in the postseason. And you mentioned 30 years since their last appearance in the NFC title game. Dak Prescott was 2 years old when that happened. So they'll be looking for him to make the turn this season. Michael, I want to ask you, though, a little bit more about Jerry Jones's, approach to these contracts, because it hasn't really felt like a great year for him. I mean, you mentioned the free agency. He said we're going all in this year, and then they made pin drop.
Yeah.
Nothing happened in free agency. Earlier this month, he admitted he didn't feel a sense of urgency signing receiver CeeDee Lamb. Then he doubled back to clarify those comments, and eventually the deal got done. But it's just so hard to get a read on what's actually going on. Do you think this is something that will happen during the season, or is it really like a prove it year for Dak?
I think I don't think it's as much as prove it, but I think he wants to put the pressure on. Sometimes, when we're faced with a deadline, you're a writer, I write. I mean, when we have too much time, we don't seem to get it done, but we're on a deadline. All of a sudden, now you got to sit in your chair and be disciplined and do what you have to do. I think he wants to see him be disciplined and sit in that quarterback chair and do what he has to do. Look, Jerry's been all over the place this offseason. You're not going to deny it, right? I mean, the other day he said that Trey Lance is definitely making the team, and now we find out he's the third-string quarterback, which makes no sense at all to pay a third-string quarterback on the fourth year of a contract. That's ridiculous. So, that means he's never going to play. They tried their asses off to get him to see if he could be a good player. It just didn't come true. So for me, I think Jerry wants to be, I think Jerry's scorned. I think he's a scorned man. He's got a lot of money. He's got every perk he could ever have in life, whether it's a helicopter, a long ass party boat, party bus. He's got it all, Grace. But I think the thing is, that's hard. He doesn't have the title, and he can't shed that. The Jimmy Johnson era still lingers within that building, and I think everybody's going to prove it, right? I think that's where he wants everybody to feel the pressure and see how they react, and some people will, and some people won't.
Well, he's got every network, every mainstream media talking about him, so he's winning in that way. But another deal we're waiting to happen during this offseason, maybe it'll happen next offseason, is Bengals star receiver Ja'Marr Chase. We know guaranteed money is really important to him. He's looking for something around $100 million guaranteed. Notable that Justin Jefferson is making $110 guaranteed. But I brought up the Spot Track projection to you last week. They project him at 4 years, $120 million. You said at the time that's not going to get it done. Now, after we see the numbers on Aiyuk, I can say for sure that's absolutely not going to get it done. So what do you think the numbers are for Ja'Marr Chase in this new deal?
Well, they start and end with Justin Jefferson, right? I think it's really Jefferson's contract. It's Lamb's contract. I think, and that's where it is. I mean, Mike Brown you can massage one thing about great players, and Mike Brown admits this, you can't overpay a great player. Ja'Marr Chase is a great player, right? I'm not sure Brandon Aiyuk's a great player. You can overpay him, but you're not going to overpay Ja'Marr Chase. And I think seriously, the deal here is going to be, is it going to be slightly above Jefferson, or is it going to be slightly below Jefferson? And the guaranteed money, Jefferson got 110 guaranteed. We saw Lamb get 100 guaranteed. A.J. Brown got 84. So there's a separation there. But look, Mike Brown's sitting there saying, wait a minute, let me get this straight. I have this year and next year if I franchise him. I pick up the 5th year. That's 2. And then I have 2 more years on franchise. Like, what am I doing here? Why am I rushing into emptying my bank account when I have 4 years? Now, the deterrent to that is, well, Joe Burrow was in the same situation and you did it for Burrow. And so that makes sense. If you're going to do it for Burrow, you're going to do it for him. You're going to do it for Chase. You got to keep them all the same. And, Burrow got $219 million guaranteed. So it isn't like Mike's not willing to make the commitment. I find this interesting because Chase, Zach Taylor comes out and says Chase is going to play in week 1. And almost as a response to that, Chase is like, no, don't speak for me, Zach Taylor. I'm putting on street clothes here. I'm wearing T-shirts and shorts. You don't tell me I'm playing when I didn't say that. So there's a little bit of that going in. But look, he's got 4 years. Here's the hard part of this whole contract is if he decides not to play, if he decides to say, oh, I have a tight hamstring, I can't play, when he's perfectly healthy, do the Bengals fine him for conduct detrimental? They certainly have every right to, unless he's got a legitimate injury, So there's going to be a push time here, and it's going to be Wednesday when we start practicing, when they get ready for New England. There's going to have to be either we get a deal done or you're going to play, one of the two. Because you got 4 years. You can't run from it. Now, they want to pay him. That's the advantage. I mean, Mike Brown, when he comes out and says, I want to pay the guy, that's huge. That's a huge thing because typically that's not Mike Brown's MO to say, I want to pay somebody. He did it with Burrow and he did it with Chase. So I got to think it'll get done. And especially if it's in that market. If Mike's trying to get this guy for $25 million, it'll never get done.
It's probably helpful to the Bengals that the CeeDee Lamb deal didn't leapfrog the Jefferson deal.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Exactly. I think you nailed it right there. It is because he could say, look, you and CD's deal are below Jefferson. Jefferson was in his 5th year. CD was in his 5th year. You're in your 4th. And what Chase is saying is, look, I'm in 4 years. I'm going early, so I have to have a really good deal so my deal holds up. So that my deal, like Burrow's deal has held up. Like Burrow's at 55. We saw that Love comes in at 55. We saw Lawrence come in at 55. Tua came in at 53-1. Goff came in at 53. Herbert's at 52. So Burrow's deal has stood the test of time. I think that's where Chase is arguing. Chase is saying, look, I want a new deal, but I don't want a deal that I'm going to lose out on. And probably 35.5, he'll be good because I can't see another receiver coming down the road that's due to get this big of a contract. I mean, Marvin Harrison's 4 years out, depending on how he plays. Unless the kid from Arizona, T-Mac, who had 300 yards the other day, unless he decides to come out early, he might get it right now.
Yeah, well, he definitely has the benefit of time on his side in this reset wide receiver market. Now he can prove it on the field, especially with Tyler Boyd gone, getting more touches there. Real quick, we want to get to another headline today. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid says Hollywood Brown not expected to play week 1. Huge bummer because we thought Patrick Mahomes would finally have all these options at wide receiver. And once again, injuries taking a hit. How does this impact the Chiefs in their opener against the Ravens?
Well, it puts a lot of pressure on Worthy, the first-round pick, right? He's got to come in and play. But, look, I think the biggest news for Chief fans, Grace, is that Rashee Rice, his court case, because it's criminal, isn't going to get prosecuted. So the runway on that deal is going to extend into the offseason, and maybe next season, he might get suspended. But having Rice, who really was coming on last year, I think is certainly going to be a huge. Worthy's got to come through. I don't think Smith-Schuster will make a difference. I think Sky Moore, they're going to ask him to do that. It'll be interesting how Baltimore approaches it because if Baltimore puts Hamilton on Kelsey and he can take him out of the game, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the corners, a lot of pressure on the receivers of Kansas City. I will say this, though. I think the bigger issue is left tackle for Kansas City. They're going to start the rookie, Kingsley Samataya, I can't pronounce his last name, from BYU. That's going to be interesting to see how he plays, right? I'm not sold on the tackles of the Chiefs, but I am sold on Patrick Mahomes finding a way to make plays.
All right, that game kicks off in 4 days. We're previewing that and more after this break.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Co., New York, New York. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi, getting you ready for the upcoming NFL season. NFL kickoff just 3 days away now with the Ravens and Chiefs opening the season in Thursday night primetime football, a rematch of the AFC Championship game when Kansas City won 17-10. And the Ravens offense just made so many questionable decisions. We'll get into that. But right now, the Chiefs, a 3.5-point favorite. It's been going back and forth between that 2.5, 3. The total set at 46.5 points. Michael, what are you looking at in this game?
This will be fun because I think this will be the first time we'll get to see Steve Spagnuolo against Lamar Jackson again, but different because we got Derrick Henry in the backfield. I think, Joe D, the offensive line coach for the Ravens, who just recently passed away tragically, it's such a shame. I mean, that's such a hard thing for an organization to get over. The death of a great coach, you lose the void. Those players were so close to him, and he did such a great job of coaching that line. He was able to take players and move them around, and now George Warhop comes in, who's kind of new to the system, doesn't really know all the players. I think there's a little bit of a transitionary state in that, and so when you've got a lot of uncertainty within the offensive line, who's playing right guard, who's playing right tackle, all those things to go along with the uncertainty of playing on the uncertainty of what they want to do. They want to run the football with Henry for sure. And then going on the road and listening to that crowd noise, I think it's going to be really a problem. This is a tough spot to walk into for Baltimore. And then uncertainty about their defense, Grace. Look, Zach Orr has coached 3 years in the National Football League. I know he played, but he's coached 3 years. And here's the thing. You can coach a short time and have experience, but there's not enough experience on Sunday. Sunday from 1 or Thursday night from 8:30 to whenever the game ends, that's the true test. That's when the scars of the past enter into your mindset and you're able to then reflect on what happened in a game before, or this is what we need to do, or this is how we have to handle it. I think this is going to be a tough one for Baltimore. Now, look, both teams are very good opening day. Both teams would be in the category of, and I break every game down, especially in week one in this category, do they have a hard training camp or do they have a soft one? Both teams have hard training camps. Teams that have soft ones, they melt away in the first week. The heat, humidity, the games. Remember, only 3% of the entire starters in the National Football League have played in the preseason, just 3%. So a lot of guys aren't even battle tested. It's going to be fun to watch. I just think Kansas City, they got stunned last year by Detroit. I think this is going to be a hard game for Baltimore. Losing Mike McDonald, Zach Orr, and then losing Coach D, I think that's a problem.
I'm just curious, and this is my betting mind working. I'm always looking for system plays. So when you say soft training camp versus hard training camp, my mind is like, ooh, I wonder what's the against the spread record of teams who have a hard training camp. But I'm just curious, what qualifies as soft versus hard for you? What are you looking at in those camps?
Well, like Zach Taylor, like the Eagles last year, they had a very soft training camp. Now, they started fast, but they melted away at the end of the year. Cincinnati, Zach Taylor, he's 0-4 in the first 2 weekends of the last 2 years. But what did he do this year? He changed training camp. He decided, okay, we're going to have a little bit harder time. We're going to practice more. We're going to be in pads. I'm actually going to play some of my players in the preseason game. I thought his dramatic changing of what he did, his backups played really well against Chicago. His backups played really well against Indianapolis. But you could tell that they practiced and their pad level was good. Football is a game of pad level. It's a game of execution. It's not a complicated sport It is, but it isn't. But if your pad level's too high and you're tired, which happens all the time, all of a sudden that fourth quarter, you got the game's even, right? And all of a sudden the better team just takes over. We saw that Clemson, Georgia. I mean, it's kind of an even game. Now, Georgia decided it was time to take this over. They're the better team. They win the last 8 minutes of the game. And if your team's not ready for the last 8 minutes because you've had a soft camp and you haven't really practiced with pads, Parcells used to say this all the time. Tell me one boxer who sparred, who didn't spar and won a fight. How many times have we read about a boxer who went to fight, but he didn't train hard enough and he lost? Frazier did that. George Foreman talked about that. Ali had done that before too. It's about your mindset. And I think, to me, you want to bet Andy Reid in preseason. You want to bet Andy Reid in the opening game. Same thing with John Harbaugh. They understand how to get their team ready. I think the Eagles this year, going down to Brazil, I think Nick Sirianni changed the way he approached. Look, he got rid of all his performance coaches, brought in the old team doctor that won the Super Bowl with him, Pete DeLuca. And so they understand that they needed to change a little bit in that platform. I think that's something you have to look at. I always go back over the opening weekends, like whose execution is good. Now, how do we determine execution? Rushing attempts and completions. You combine those two numbers, you get over 52. You're at least executing. You may not win the game, but you're executing.
Yeah, this reminds me of hearing Alabama players when they graduate from Tuscaloosa. It's become a thing, I think, where reporters ask them after their rookie training camp, "Oh, how'd you feel?" And they're like, Alabama was a lot harder, because Nick Saban ran what he calls the fourth quarter program, which is, top secret and no one knows what goes on there. But hey, he churned out monsters out of that program. But anyways, back to this Chiefs-Ravens game. I'm on the same side as you. I'm going to lay the 3 points with the Chiefs. I think this is the best team Mahomes has ever had in his tenure there. A lot of it was because of Steve Spagnuolo, the best defensive coordinator that no one seems to know. But KC's defense was its best in yards per game, points per game, and sack percentage since the late 90s. And we saw them absolutely shut down Lamar Jackson in that title game last year. They made him hold the ball in the first half, then came after him with blitzes, all types of pressures, simulated pressures. In the second half, took away the explosive play. He only completed 3 of 11 passes for more than 10 yards. So it'll be interesting to see how they play him this week and how Jackson responds. Something I want to get your thoughts on, Michael, are the impact of Derrick Henry in this offense. And you kind of brought it up, but during the offseason, we kept seeing, talk about Todd Monken getting Lamar more involved as a passer, letting him call audibles. And we saw the improvement in the passing game last year, where the Ravens ranked 3rd in yards per pass attempt after ranking 26 in the previous season. Lamar also set career highs in pass attempts, passing yards, and completion rate. He's now coming off his healthiest season ever as well, answering all those durability questions, starting 16 games. So my question is, do you think they're going to run him less now that they have Derrick Henry?
Well, look, the last time they played the Chiefs, Lamar had 8 carries. The remaining running backs had 8 carries. So, they went in, and this is a one-score game. I mean, this is a 17-10 game. I thought they panicked in that game, Grace. I thought they were they got ahead of themselves and they panicked. And for them to win this game, they're going to have to really do a good job of running the football. Henry's got to carry it at least 20 times in the game, and they've got to find a way to use play-action pass to get the ball down the field, whether it's to Flowers, whether it's to Andrews, whomever they can, and then use Lamar in terms of his feet. Look, they did a good job. They played well enough. They held Kansas City to 17 points. Kansas City averaged 2.8 yards per carry in the last game. Right? They averaged 8 yards per attempt per average per completion in the game. They had 36 attempts for 241 yards. And so, and the longest pass play was to Valdez-Scantling at the end of the game, the 32-yarder that kind of clinched to put the game away. I just felt like Baltimore panicked. And now, I don't know if Baltimore's going to be as good defensively. I think Mahomes will have a good day. Only 9 incompletions in the last time they played, and Mike McDonald was calling the signals in the game. So, That tells you they understand how to attack the coverages. They understand how to attack the defense. I just think this is a better team in Kansas City than Baltimore has right now, as Baltimore has to bring some things together. But to answer your question, yeah, look, I mean, Henry's got to be the guy that carries them, and they got to make plays outside the numbers to Zay Flowers down the field. The other thing I don't think is you can't make this. I think if you get into a third down game, if Baltimore gets into a third down game, last time they played, they were 3 for 11 on third down. If it's a third down game, Baltimore's not going to win it.
One more stat I'll add in there. Patrick Mahomes, 36-11 at home, 15-4 in the month of September, 5-2 on Thursdays, and 4-1 against the Ravens. So no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah, bet the Chiefs, right? It doesn't matter how you want to do it, bet the Chiefs. Yeah, you're an idiot if you don't bet the Chiefs.
I'm glad we're on the same side here. That game starts the NFL season, kicking off at 8:20 Eastern on Thursday. Okay, we kind of went a little heavy on that one, so let's squeeze another game in here. How about Cowboys and Browns? I think that one's really interesting because the Browns opened as a slight home dog. They're going to close as a slight home favorite. Let's plus 1.5 to minus 2.5. That's like a 4-point swing.
To me, it's I mean, this is a Tom Brady game. We get Tom Brady going in here. Right now we have DraftKings has it at minus 2.5, right? I think right now the current line is 2.5, which seems it opened up as Dallas was laying a point, and I don't know where Cleveland is health wise. I don't know where Cleveland is Deshaun. I don't know where the confidence in Cleveland comes from. I mean, Dak had a good year last year. CeeDee Lamb's back on the team. Okay, Tony Pollard's not there. The offensive line looks like they could actually be better. They're going to start 2 rookies, but they actually look like they can be better than they were last year. Meanwhile, Cleveland, we're not sure about their 2 tackles. Are they going to start? We're not sure about the receiving situation. And mostly, we're not sure about Deshaun Watson. Where the hell is he? And yet, because of the perception by the negativity towards Dallas, I think this line's flipped in the wrong direction.
Okay. See, you think it's about public perception. I was because I was trying to give you an answer. Why is everyone so low on Cowboys? I was thinking it's their offensive line and the changes going on there. Of course, you got your quarterback.
But if you watch it, though, Grace, if you watch it in the summer, Guyton's good, Beebe's, they're good. They're good. Yeah. They're going to be good up front. They're going to be inexperienced. They're going to be good. But Cleveland's defensive front, other than Garrett, all those guys are 30 years old. They'll be fresh, but will they be fresh in the fourth quarter if we have heat and humidity? That'll be the question.
Yep, the Texas boys will certainly be used to that. All right, an intriguing matchup ahead. You're listening to the GM Shuffle. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, Lombardi's top quarterbacks.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle. Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi, getting you ready for week 1 of the NFL season. Michael's got a treat for us today. He's got his red chip and blue chip NFL quarterbacks. So dividing them into 2 tiers here. And we're going to start with the red chippers. In this group, he has Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, Matt Stafford, Justin Herbert, and Jared Goff. Michael, what went into your decision-making process here of who to include in the red chip group?
Well, to me, red chips are just a little bit, they're in the top 10 of their position. Like, let's take Goff, for example. There's always 2 or 3 plays in a game where Goff plays where he should be really good, but he just misses. You go to the 49er game, he's got a chance to win the game. He has to move to his left, make a throw, not a hard throw, but make a throw, doesn't do it. And that becomes a problem. So for me, I think that just a little bit is missing in the sense of the blue chips. It doesn't mean they're not the red chips, but when you count on a guy playing great, it's like Steph Curry in the Olympics. When you need greatness, he was great, right? I mean, he was tremendous when they needed to play. All those superstars, all of a sudden they're looking around. Oh, wait a minute, Steph, why don't you take this over? Why don't you handle this? And I think to me, that's what's so good about it. And I was really jacked about, he's played better. Goff, when he's protected, he's really good. But I think this list is reflective of guys that, like in the red trip, like Herbert should win more games for his talent, right? He should be a better player. Stafford, I think he does everything. He leaves it out there. I just don't know if he's got enough juice left in his body at his age. Stroud's only going to get better. He's young. And Prescott, when the games are big, you got to play big. He didn't.
So let's go to the blue chippers now. And this one feels fairly obvious. You have Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, but coming in at number 5, Brock Purdy. So maybe that's the one that people didn't expect.
Not even
think,
close.
okay, you think it's not close.
Grace,
okay.
You're new to the show. So explain to me why Kurt Warner, who goes from bagging groceries in Iowa, playing in the Arena League, and then becoming a superstar for the Rams and gets into the Hall of Fame, deservingly so, is a sensation. And poor Brock Purdy just keeps getting ridiculed. I mean, let's put it in perspective, okay? Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, Hakeem. Warner had as many weapons as any human being on planet Earth, but all we ever talk about, well, Purdy's got good players around him. Well, what did Warner have? Did he have crap around him? I mean, was he throwing the ball to guys that couldn't catch? Of course not. But he's made him really good. This Purdy thing, it just blows my mind why Warner gets love and Purdy gets no respect. It just doesn't make any sense. Both of them overcame unbelievable odds. Both of them came from Kurt Warner would not throw a pass at training camp for the Green Bay Packers. He was so, I don't know if he was gun shy, intimidated. I don't know what the word was, but Ron Wolf told me personally, he said, look, we had him. He was there. He had a great career at Northern Iowa, but we couldn't get him to throw the ball. He wouldn't make it. So, okay, we cut him, and he went on. He went in the end. But this kid, almost 10 yards per attempt. I mean, he's sensational. He makes every throw you want him to make. He moves when you look. This run he makes against Detroit to basically get him in the lead. It's a huge run. It's an instinctive run. I think to me, we get such a predisposed perception of where you get drafted. So all we talk about is Trey Lance. Meanwhile, he's a third string quarterback, right? All we talk about is DJ from, went to Clemson. He's a 5-star. He didn't play worth a shit in 3 colleges. Like, seriously, at some point, when do you lose your stars? I mean, I know when you become a general, you keep your stars unless you get thrown out of the Army or the Navy or whatever the hell it is. But, you got to earn them. You get 5 stars, you got to earn them. How many 5-star quarterbacks did you cover when you were in Birmingham watching Alabama? They recruited every 5-star quarterback. Not all of them were great, right?
No, that's true. A lot of it is perception. So I love that Kurt Warner example. And Brock Purdy also coming back from injury as well and putting up maybe the best statistical season in 49ers history. Over 4,200 pass yards, the first Pro Bowl appearance for a quarterback since Jeff Garcia. He's definitely got some grit to him. So I like it. I like your argument there.
No, go ahead. No, I think to me, it's just I get so frustrated. Look, I get frustrated that people think Lamar. I mean, the players voted he wasn't what more does Lamar have to do to prove he's a good player? I'm not sure they've done everything. I mean, when you have 8 passes, when you have 8 rushing attempts by Lamar and 8 the rest of the team, and meanwhile you're in a playoff game that you're a 1-score game and you're not giving the ball, you ran a power play that gained 15 yards. You came back and ran an unbalanced power play again and get another 15 yards to the running back. And that was the last times you run the plays. Lamar needs play. Like if you put Lamar with Kyle Shanahan in that offense, I think he's dynamic. And I think the big one, I'd love to hear what you think on this, is Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow has to have a good year because I think last year at the start of the season with the calf injury and the way he played, they were not the same team. Now this year they're going to be more of a 12 personnel team. They'll still be 11, but if they move Chase inside, I think Chase is going to be huge for him if he's in fact on the field and doesn't have the contract. But I think Burrow has earned this place based on his past performance, but he's got to keep it or else he'll get demoted.
Yeah. I mean, talent, he's absolutely there. It's just, can he avoid the training room? He had the calf injury in training camp, the wrist in week 10. I think a healthy Burrow, sky's the limit for this team if they have a healthy Burrow. And that certainly helps with what could be T. Higgins' final season. They missed out on the opportunity to cash in on their version of the big three, Jamar Chase, Higgins, and Tyler Boyd last year. So they got to cash in this year. I'm a little confused on his haircut, though. I don't know what that means for them.
I have no idea what that haircut was. I have no idea. I have
He
no
looks like
idea. But his
Justin
teammates,
Timberlake, like the frosted tips
yeah.
from the 90s or something.
I mean, but his teammates seem to love him. I think Zach Moss is going to be a good addition on the team. I think he gives them a little bit more juice. I think they kept 6 tight ends on their roster, which is fascinating. I mean, most teams don't keep 6 tight ends ever,
Mm-hmm.
but they kept 6 on their roster. And I think, to me, that tells me they're going to be in a lot of they're going to change their personnel groupings, which they didn't typically do. I mean, the people say, well, they don't have Tyler Boyd. I mean, Tyler Boyd, like, he's hard to replace. Seriously, the guy, averaged below 10 yards a catch. He was really good at blocking on the on the weak side runs. But I mean, like, I'm not losing any sleep over Tyler Boyd. Nice player, good to have him. But I mean, Tennessee's probably happy they have him. But you don't go to drive to the stadium saying, oh my God, how are we going to stop Tyler Boyd?
Yeah, and it definitely helps being able to move Jamar Chase into more than one spot, getting him more touches. When you were putting or deciding on your 1 through 5, so Mahomes number 1, that one's pretty obvious. The gap between Allen, Burrow, Jackson, is there one? Are they interchangeable at 2, 3, 4?
I couldn't believe I read the other day, Grace, where they said Josh Allen's the most overrated player in the league. Like, how is that over? The guy's got 15 rushing touchdowns. His team's overrated. He's not. Like,
Yeah.
I think, to me, they're small on defense. When Matt Milano's not in there, they struggle. When the 2 safeties, when Hyde and Poyer were playing good, they were good. But when they weren't, not the same team. We'll see if they can recoup that. We still don't know. They gave Von Miller all that money. They paid him. And look, he's not done anything. He didn't even make a tackle last year. So there's a lot of questions to be determined on that team. I think Josh Allen's great. Does he make mistakes? Yeah, so did Brett Favre. I mean, did anybody question Brett Favre? Oh, no, he's a gunslinger. We like Brett Favre when he makes a mistake, but Josh Allen's overrated when he makes one. It's all just a narrative with nobody understanding the game. I mean, look, when the ball's in the red zone, you better defend Josh Allen. His ass is going to put it in the end zone. 15 rushing touchdowns for a quarterback. Plus, nobody wants to tackle the big guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's durable. 98 game starting streak, the longest active streak among NFL quarterbacks. I think the big issue, the one that people have issue with, is the turnovers. 18 interceptions was the second most in the NFL last year. 47 over the last 3 seasons was more than any other quarterback. But maybe that's just what you sign up for with these big play guys, like high variance at times.
Yeah. I mean, plus it's a little bit like, it's in baseball, and I know you're a baseball fan too, but if a center fielder in baseball doesn't make any errors, he's not getting any balls. Like, if you're not trying to put the ball into a tight window, you're going to get some interceptions. You're going to get a tip pass. And I think, to me, for all the analytics that we've done over the years, and I think analytics is important, but we've yet to break down the quarterback interception. Is it his fault, or is it the receiver run the wrong route? Or did the ball get tipped? Or, what is it? Is it a true turnover, or is it just we're going to count it as it's like missed field goals. Nothing drives me crazier than missed field goals are not counted in the turnover takeaway column. Like, there is significant. You miss a field goal, you miss a 35-yard field goal, momentum shifts. I know that some people don't believe in momentum, but momentum shifts, and you get the ball 7 yards away from where the ball was spotted. It's gold. That's a turnover. No matter how you look at it, it's a turnover. And we don't ever talk, we're going to try this kick. I mean, think about this. Dan Campbell only had 2 kicks last year over 50 yards. Right? He went for it 40 times on 4th down last year. He's 20 for 40. If he goes for it, if he has a kicker that can make them, he's adding points, 50%. Like, if you play in a dome and you're only trying 2 kicks over 50 yards, that means either you don't trust your kicker or you trust your offense, but your offense is only producing 50%. But everybody says, oh, Dan's aggressive. That's good. Well, numbers. Is 50% good when you could be at 80?
Honestly, oh man, I'd have to go back and look at every situation, because there are times mathematically where going for 2 is the correct call. So that's, I don't know. I feel like that's case by case. The thing though, I'm totally backing you on is the interceptions. Not all of them are a quarterback stat. Some of them have got to be put on the wide receiver. And you'd think with all these new analytics popping up, we'd get that stat one of these days.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Hopefully it
absolutely.
comes.
Yeah. Well, I know this is the end of the first episode, but we are really appreciate, Grace, having you with us. Join us. Thank you for being welcome to the GM Shuffle family. We appreciate you, and we're going to have a great year. I promise you.
Hey, I am so excited. Michael, thank you for having me here too. We're going to have a great season ahead. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Remember to download, listen, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch on the DraftKings YouTube page. For Michael Lombardi, I'm Grace Remington. We'll see you back here on Thursday.